we don't have a lot of the hidden fees that other distributors have. It's pretty transparent. We never take your music down, even if you stop paying. I believe it just goes to like a 85-15 or like a 90-10. You don't ever have to worry about getting your music taken down either. That's another thing with other distributors. Once you stop paying your monthly service fee, they might take your music down.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 309, and we've got a very special guest for today's episode to talk about distribution, how that's changing in the music business, and where the opportunities are. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is Circa, and we're super pumped to bring you today our friend Dame Ritter back to the podcast. Dame's the Director of Communications at Two Lost, and we're super psyched to have him back. Cirque, what's up? Dame, welcome back.
Happy to be here. Congratulations on 309. I know a lot of times artists say they're being consistent, and I say, well, how many weeks have you done something? And it's like 4 weeks, 5 weeks. You guys are 309 and going strong. So shout out to you guys.
Much appreciated, man. Thank you so much for saying so.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. It's been a minute since we've had you back on the show. Pumped to have you here. For those of our listeners who don't know you and what you're up to, you've worn a lot of hats in music and in business over the years. What brings you to where you are today? Dame's been a manager. He's worked in all sorts of different capacities with artists and record labels. He founded the MEC, the Music Entrepreneurs Club, and he's got a ton going on. Probably one of the busiest people in the business. So just to give everybody a little bit of a rundown of who you are and what you do, I'd love for you to just kind of introduce yourself if you're down.
Yeah, so I've been working with creators since 2008. That is when I started a record label. Prior to that, I was in the corporate world, worked for a lot of big companies, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, Deloitte. But then I got laid off. And then my little brother was going to college at the time, wanted to drop out of school and do music. And that was kind of the beginning of music for me. So him and a friend of his, Hobson, wanted to start a record label. So, initially I just wanted to help him out. And then as I got more and more into it, became a full-time thing, pretty successful up until about 2015, 2016. It came to an unfortunate end. Me and Hobson butted heads in a pretty ridiculous fashion. But that's how I got stuck in music. Once you're in something for so long and have a little bit of success, I enjoy it. I enjoy working with creators in different capacities, but that's where I have a lot of relationships. That's where I have a lot of experience. And not that I can't do anything else, because I continue to do other things. But, as much as I want to run away from the music industry sometimes, it always pulls me back with another opportunity. I get another phone call or somebody needs help doing something that I have experience in. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. But most recently, I took a role at Two Lost, the music distribution company. And hasn't even been a year yet. So I started full time in June of last year. I'm a director of communications. But it's kind of a startup vibe. So you get an opportunity to work on a lot of different things. And because my background is so diverse, if there's a hole and you have the experience and the ability to plug it, they kind of let you do that. So sometimes I'm working, with some A&R stuff, some HR stuff, some marketing things. So I really get an opportunity to flex a lot of the different muscles that I've been working on over the past, since I graduated college many years ago. So it's dope. I enjoy it, and it's going to be a big year for us. And then on the management side, I don't manage music artists anymore, but I manage Big Ja, who's a comedian, director, actor. Then a young lady named Persephone, who's a model, host, actress. So I'm definitely still managing artists, just not music artists anymore. And I don't say that I would never manage a music artist again, but it would have to be a pretty interesting artist. They even have to check a lot of boxes, because I'm older now and just don't have the patience that, is required from management at times.
I can definitely empathize if one were to get burnt out on sort of the music side of creatives. It can be a rare breed at times. Super cool to see you entering the distribution space. It's definitely something we talk a lot about on this podcast and done a lot of like theory crafting about, because it's this interesting, digital distributors are this interesting solution or wedge between sort of the music industry quick crashing to what seemed like it would be zero, and then this stopgap of streaming providing sort of a more convenient solution to piracy, where you're willing to pay this little bit of premium to not deal with the inconvenience of torrenting and keeping all your files on all these devices. You now have this simple interface you can access from any device. And so it kind of it was like the plunge protection for the whole industry. And out of it sprang this intermediary business type digital distributor. And ever since the days of early TuneCore, where they're charging like $80 per single, and then like putting mysterious label services on top of that, I've always thought that like, okay, this is going to drastically shift over the next few years. Well, yeah, just to say that we have long expected this space to shift massively. And recently on the podcast, we were talking about the commoditization of streaming, where like you have this very low cost service you're offering, and like the premium on that cost has always been what the consumer, in this case the artist, didn't know, that like TuneCore is running a glorified database and it's almost zero cost for them to distribute you. And to see like sort of two loss model, it seems like being very aware of that and front running that race to the bottom and kind of making up that difference in scale and volume. I would love to hear sort of your perspective as someone inside Two Loss, what the strategy is there, how they sort of view this space, and how you've interpreted that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what Two Loss have done is built a platform pretty efficiently from a tech standpoint. And I can't get into the nitty gritty of that because I'm not an engineer. But I know that a lot of distributors are suffering just from like storage costs and just kind of the way they built out their platform. And I believe that there's something there that we've done a little bit smarter so that it's not as costly. But we really just want to build a platform that services artists and continues to evolve. I know that a lot of distributors, once they get to a certain size, they kind of take their foot off the gas in terms of innovation, in terms of listening to artists. I think we've done a really good job at just continuing to evolve the platform. And there's just so many more changes in the pipeline. So this month or next month, we should be rolling out our advanced analytics, well, for the artists that do look at their analytics and that understand the power of data, it will be a very powerful tool because you'll get access to some insights that aren't available anywhere else. But we also have a lot of integrations into the platforms. We integrate with Cosign, with BeatBread for if you need alternative financing options. So I think at the end of the day, what I tell artists is, look, your distributor is not going to make or break your career. Right. We can make things a little bit easier, but the heavy lift is on you. You need to figure out, your brand. You need to work on your music. You need to be consistent. You need to build out a team, continue to progress. All that stuff we don't touch at all. We just hopefully make things a little bit easier on the distribution side. So with collaborator splits, things like that, like I said, alternative financing options, and just more features to be added into the future. So that's what I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to be a part of a platform that continues to listen to the artists, continues to evolve with the industry. And it's been great so far. Once people get new ideas, there's constantly feedback given on the platform. If there's something wrong, we try to address it as soon as possible. So that's kind of what made me want to be a part of this team and to help us push things forward, because I think we're at the forefront of innovation in distribution. We continue to see more and more artists coming over. And I don't know if I can reveal some of the other plans that we have for this year, but yeah, I don't see the growth stopping anytime soon.
Nice.
That's really interesting. That was a question that I actually had for you, Dame, was, and you sort of answered it here, but I'd love to hear you go a bit more into it from like a 30,000-foot view. What attracted you to Two Loss and distribution as opposed to, so, there's tons of opportunities out there, especially for someone with such a long career history and success track record. What drew you to working at Two Loss? Was it primarily that stuff? Was it the team? Was it the innovation? I think there's something that artists can learn from a story like this, just about thinking like a business person like yourself, about opportunities and where they exist and how to make those sorts of choices.
Yeah. No, I mean, in addition to the stuff that I mentioned, just in terms of where the company was at and how young it is, right? I wanted to be a part of something smaller so that I could have, my contributions can be more impactful and get the opportunity to have a voice, be heard. And, they were doing well before I got here, but again, it was a pretty young company and we've grown a lot over the past year. So to be able to contribute to that and, just to kind of continue to see our trajectory or what I believe is going to happen this year, like I said, more artists coming over, bigger artists coming over, artists getting out of major deals and needing a distribution home that still has some of those label services in house, so we're able to catch some of those artists that come out of their major deals, working with smaller labels. It's an interesting time because there is a lot of shakeup, and I think there will continue to be a lot of shakeup at major labels, both on the artist side and layoffs, just, left and right. So there'll be executives that want to start labels or distribution companies, and we might have the white label solution for them. So I think it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like the industry is like clearly with the rise of like alternative distributors after it was kind of like a two-horse race for a while, and now like there's just a wellspring of new options for artists to distribute with, and I think that extends out to more services. It seems like we're finally catching a little bit of the wave of digitization where it's like democratized to a degree where like lots more people can enter and are like less restricted from entering. Speaking on the label side, like because you've interfaced with a lot of labels and you know that side of the industry. Do you see disruption coming for labels? Are there like sort of is there writing on the wall in that sense in your mind, or do you still think like we're very much entrenched in this major system?
Shake up for major labels.
Yeah, or even just like disruptive participants entering.
Yeah, well, I mean, because a lot of the major labels have like these joint ventures with smaller labels, right? And I think that, over time, a lot of those deals will come up and we'll be able to potentially partner with label because ultimately, our business is scale. We want to work with bigger partners, bigger artists, bigger labels, and still work with, independent artists as well. But we need to continue to grow for it to make sense for our business model. So, I definitely, the majors will always be around. It's definitely not, they're going to have to probably get smaller and smarter. There were just layoffs a few months ago, and I think they'll continue to be some pain points this year as well, that ultimately will hopefully positively affect our business. So yeah, I definitely see some shakeup in the coming months for sure.
For artists coming out of contracts, like you mentioned, Dame, that are distribution deals specifically, and Two Lost kind of coming in and being the next right step for them. What does that look like, and why is Two Lost the choice in that case? I know we have artists who and bands who listen that might find themselves in a position like that either right now or in the future. What does that look like, and why is that a choice or a beneficial position to find themselves in as opposed to renewing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for the major label to work for an artist, you kind of have to have a priority, right? Like they have more of a footprint around the world to really press the button if that artist is a priority. If you're the next Justin Bieber or you just are a priority to that label. If you do sign a deal with a major and you don't feel like you're the priority, sometimes you're kind of left on your own and you still have to do a lot of heavy lifting. I think when artists get signed, they believe, oh, okay, now I'm good. When really that's when the work starts because you're kind of have to you're at the table, but you gotta elbow people just to kind of make sure that you are fed and you're a priority, like I said. But there are a lot of artists that aren't. So I don't believe that we have like the exact same resources of a major label, but we do have some alternative financing options that are much more, the terms are much better than you're going to get with a major label. We do have in-house label services for our priority clients that will continue to pitch to DSPs and for TikTok ad credits and Spotify homepage takeovers and things like that. I think it's a great option for artists to still receive some of the support if major label's not for them or if they're not a priority at the label that they're at, that once they get out of that deal, we can still provide some of those services for them.
I think that one of the, like, an artist's mental model for switching distributors, like, I would say if you're a cost sensitive artist, like the choice for a number of years has been DistroKid because it's $20 a month, sort of unlimited. But then there's like this story behind that that's become increasingly part of the narrative, is that like, well, yeah, but per song you might end up paying many multiples of that in add-ons that manifests as a yearly fee once again. How does Two Loss compete there? How much does it cost to distribute through Two Loss, and what do the add-ons look like?
Yeah, we're only $3 a month. So, and I think I want to say $20 for the year, if I remember correctly. I should know this, but yeah, only $3 a month. And a lot of the things that other distributors charge for, we don't charge for, right? So, collaborator splits, for example. If us three make a song and you're not a Two Loss artist, but I distribute it through my account, you guys can make free collaborator accounts. You don't have to have a paid account in order to get paid out. So I think that's another way that DistroKid has been able to build and make so much money, because there's a lot of collaborators, but everybody has to pay X amount of dollars per month. We don't have a lot of the hidden fees that other distributors have. It's pretty transparent. We never take your music down, even if you stop paying. I believe it just goes to like a 85-15 or like a 90-10. You don't ever have to worry about getting your music taken down either. That's another thing with other distributors. Once you stop paying your monthly service fee, they might take your music down. A lot of these things that you don't think about when you sign up for a distributor, that you're like, damn, eventually it starts to be a lot more expensive than you thought. So yeah, we just don't have all of these fees, because again, we're trying to service independent artists here at all levels. So, I think that's one of the reasons we've been able to grow so fast. People think that we're a small distributor, but we have over 300,000 artists and labels on the platform. So, it's maybe smaller than some of our competitors, but we're growing fast, and it's not a small operation.
That's cool because, yeah, I have a group that is decentralized in a way where like we do have every single song has mix engineer, three main collaborators, and then any additional features. And I dealt with it with DistroKid where, for one, like to get their splits, like they all have to sign up for a $20 a year DistroKid account. And then on top of that, every song we distribute, which we pump, like when we were active like a year ago, we were pumping out a new song every 2 weeks. And every time I upload a song, I'm paying $30 for like leave a legacy feature, meaning like don't take it down if I leave DistroKid. So that's very cool to hear. And definitely like this space has long needed an alternative to that model because it comes with those like final page before you upload like fee selections. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and advanced collaborator splits is coming soon too. So what I mean by that is, if you need to recoup a certain amount before the payments start splitting, then you'll be able to do that. Because obviously, as a label, if you have a profit sharing deal with an artist and you want to be able to recoup, $500, $1,000 before the splits start, then you'll be able to do that. Or you could do it the reverse way. You can pay somebody up to a certain amount. You can say, okay, I want to pay this person $500, but then after that, I wanted to split the payments this way, or I want to stop the splits. So you'll have that functionality in the coming months as well, that I know will be helpful, because I used to run a label, and it would have been amazing to have, when I started the label, it was expensive for us to do like royalty reporting, right? And now with these distributors, there's options for collaborator splits. It makes things a lot easier, a lot more transparent to get paid on a monthly basis. Because again, I was paying the guys out because it was so expensive. We only paid out twice a year. So now just everything just moves so much faster, and it can be so much more transparent, that hopefully kind of helps you with your relationships with other collaborators, and just overall just your business in general.
Yeah, I mean, I literally was like absorbing like anytime we had a marketing fee, sometimes paying out our mix engineer, but he also gets a split on the back end. To have those advanced split features would have been very key a couple of years ago. So super cool to hear that you guys are on.
Yeah, and again, that's what I'm talking about in terms of like continuing to evolve the platform. The CEO Greg, he's working on the platform like 24/7. He's in the weeds. Really wants to build the best product out there. So that's another reason just seeing his passion for the platform and his passion for engineering and music, like I was like, okay, they're serious over here about building something special.
Yeah, that rocks.
Dame, I know you mentioned, and this was like a hard hitting sort of moment of things you say to artists is like, distribution's not going to make or break your career, but it's an important part of it. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, despite that idea, I think there's a lot of things that artists might be missing about distribution, opportunities that they might not know about, things that they might just not know because they're kind of glued into the old model or an older model. So I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit. Opportunities that are out there that artists just might not be aware of.
Well, the mistake that I continue to see artists make is just like uploading things and wanting it to come out as soon as possible, right? I think with any distributor, you want to upload your music at least 2 weeks in advance to give yourself a real shot at pitching to the DSPs and getting in release radar and things like that. Because you can't, there's some artists that make a song in the morning, want to release it at night, and I continue to see that, and I don't understand it for the life of me. Like, why would you not want to give yourself the best shot at your music being promoted the right way? So yeah, no matter what distributor you have, like, you can still promote through Spotify for artists and things like that. But like I said, we do have in-house label services. I'm not going to sit here and say that every artist on our platform gets pitched, because that's not really a service that you can scale, right? It's for artists to have a little bit of momentum. We do have a pitching tool on the platform that anybody has access to, but then we have an in-house label service team that services the artists that start to get a little traction, or artists that we have direct deals with. So yeah, and then I actually forgot the original question. My apologies, Jack.
No problem. Just areas of opportunity around distribution that artists might not know about. I think you make a really good point regarding that mistake of wanting to upload and have something out like at a snap of a finger. I often think about that just in terms of marketing as well. I think a lot of artists look to, what major artists are doing in terms of these overnight drops where it's an album is out the next day and nobody knew about it, and the socials got wiped on a Tuesday and then the record was out on a Wednesday, and thinking that that's the way that they should do it. And I sometimes wonder if the downstream effect of that is what you were talking about, where it's like upload fast, get it out the next day.
Yeah.
But other opportunities that might be out there for artists as well. I'm curious what you think regarding distribution specifically.
Well, in terms of just on our platform, you have the option to be able to copyright. If you feel like a particular song needs to be copywritten, you can do that within the platform. You can get cover licenses within the platform. If you do covers, you can release music the right way, getting a cover license so you could be able to monetize a cover. There's AI art generator within the platform. You can run your analytics and see if you're eligible for an advance. And then we have instant advance options, because it takes about 2 to 3 months for Spotify to pay out streams. Our algorithm can kind of run the numbers and give you an advance on your streams right away. And so there's the financing is big for independent artists, but those opportunities are for artists that have a little bit of traction. You have to have some streaming royalties coming in order to be take advantage of the financing options. But those are a few of the features or options on the Two Lost platform.
Hell yeah. Well, shifting a little bit, I don't want to make you talk about work the whole podcast.
Yeah.
But shifting away from that a little bit, I'd love to kind of hear or get your insight, because I know that you said you're not really working with musical artists anymore, but I see you on Twitter, like you are still very much thinking about the space, thinking about the independent artists a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear from you, just for our audience of mostly independent artists, like what are some of the behavior patterns or mindsets that you think are most ruinous to artists, make them the hardest to work with? And what would you say is a model of like an artist that you would just drop everything and work with tomorrow?
I don't know the answer to that last question. No, I mean, like I said earlier, like there must be a ton of boxes checked before I even would consider working with another artist. And some of those boxes being one, for me, where I'm at, I feel like the artist has to have some traction already. There needs to be, some monetization options. You got to have something that you got to be making some money so that we can figure out how to increase that, right? I would have to think that they were just tremendously talented, easy to work with, communicates well, has an interest in understanding and learning the business. That's a crucial thing for me. Have a good understanding of their brand, understanding of like what the end goal is, what they really want. So yeah, all these things. If I was talking to somebody outside the music industry and they heard those things and they were like, "Oh, that probably shouldn't be hard to find. Like that's probably but it's rare. Artists typically just want to do what they want to do, and I learned a long time ago, like, not to force it. Right? You can't force artists to do something that they don't want to do. It's going to end up all bad, all bad, typically. Obviously, I'm real heavy on education. We started the Music Entrepreneur Club. Even Two Lost on a weekly basis has Two Lost office hours. Office hours is every Monday at 12 p.m. You don't even have to use Two Lost to join us. It's just a Zoom session. We go through a different topic every week. This past Monday, we had my guy Eric Abel. He's a booking agent. So we talked through like how independent artists are booking shows in 2024, so people can really understand, even for some of the more novice people, like, what is a booking agent? What do they do? How do they get paid? What is a promoter? What is a talent buyer? Like some of the more basic things, but then also some of the more creative ideas in terms of how artists can get on the road or in front of a crowd and start working on their live shows. So Two Lost office hours, again, is open to anybody. You don't need to be a Two Lost user, although hopefully you do at least try it out. For Two Lost office hours, anybody can tap in. And I just think the education piece is so crucial. Like, if an artist doesn't understand the business, that's okay, but it's not rocket science. Like, I can probably teach an artist everything they need to know to avoid 95% of like disastrous situations in a week. If I just sat down with them for a week, you'll probably be able to avoid like 95% of disastrous situations or like big mistakes. It's really not that hard of an industry to understand. You just have to like apply yourself.
You've seen so much in the music industry too, which was one of the big reasons, 6 months ago when you told me about what you were starting to do at Two Lost. I was so excited for the educational component. And this was before you even mentioned that part to me. I was like, Dame's going to bring some fire to this company in terms of being able to have a new platform to educate artists from. And I was so excited about that because there's so much that people can learn from you. I mean, hell, there's so much that I've learned from you working with you over the years.
No, I mean, our exchange has been mutual for sure. You guys, that's the reason why I started working with you guys, is because when I found your brand and the content you guys were putting out, I think once you've been in the industry for a while, it's easy to identify the people that get it, right? Especially in the independent space, it doesn't take long. I could probably listen to an interview for, 5, 7 minutes, and I'll be like, yeah, this person understands, because I've been working with creators since 2008, and it's always just about community building, right? If you understand how to build community and you have talent and some passion and drive and creativity, you're probably going to find some success.
Yeah. Just to follow back on the last question I had asked, like, what are some of the qualities that you find independent artists fall into all too often that makes them more difficult to work with or less likely to succeed? What can artists like work on overall?
Yeah. A lot of artists get trapped in their own bubble. Like, literally at least once a month, an artist, whether through Two Loss or somewhere else, like, they think they're just a lot further along than they really are, right? And when you're further along than you really are, you have expectations that aren't reasonable for where you actually are, right? So, artists will come to me and say, "Hey, Dame, I really don't think there's anybody doing it like this independently." And it's somebody with like 200,000 monthly listeners. And that's amazing. Like, I'm not putting them down for getting 200,000 monthly listeners, but there are a shitload of artists on Spotify, independent artists, DIY artists that have 200,000 plus, so when you start to think that what you're doing is so amazing, you might take your foot off the gas and you might stop doing the things that you really need to do to get to the next level, because you start to think that some of these opportunities that you should be taking advantage of are beneath you. right? So then you kind of slow down because you're not doing what you should be doing to get to the next level, because you think you're on level 7, but you're really on level 4. So you'll never really get to level 7 because you stopped doing the things that you should be doing to get to level 5.
That's such a good point. I had a conversation with an artist just the other day around that same kind of topic. It was around just engaging with fans, and they were kind of feeling like, well, I don't need to do this anymore because I'm seeing this engagement. That means I don't have to. And it's like, well, no, you're seeing this engagement. That means you need to double down, do more.
Exactly.
Yeah, look at what sometimes artists are like, oh, I got to do all this and that. It's like, go look at what The Rock does all day, dude. He's a like giga millionaire. Like literally after everything he does, he's signing autographs. He's talking to people. Like that's the hallmark of a successful person. It's like literally the job you signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, some people were built for it and some weren't. I mean, the beauty these days is, I've seen artists just kind of build their businesses in so many different ways, right? You do have the ability to kind of set things up how you want it. Because back in the day where artists just kind of went the major label route, you kind of had to do what the major asked you to do. And if you didn't sign up for that, then nobody was going to hear your music. Now that we can go to direct to fans, I'm having conversations with artists that once they get to a certain point, they can be like, oh, I don't like touring. So I'm just going to continue making music, put it out consistently, and make money through streaming and merch and publishing. Some artists want to lean more into merch or touring. Everybody's revenue mix can look different. And I think that's what's cool about today, but you still got to put in the work and you got to get to the level where you can kind of carve things out the way you want them carved out.
Yeah, it's interesting the mindset challenges that artists face, especially as they grow. I think that that's a really interesting one that you bring up, Dame, is like getting ahead of yourself and seeing your successes as billboards that you're passing by, as opposed to road signs of where you should keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's tough to manage egos and expectations like along the journey, right? Especially with artists because they're constantly being told how amazing they are by their fans. So it's easy for them to kind of buy into all of this praise on social media. So I understand why they think they're in a different place, but it takes somebody that's has a little bit more experience, or they can step back and get a bird's eye view of the entire thing to get a more realistic understanding of kind of where you're at and what needs to be done. Being an independent artist is continuous work. Like it's a hard thing to do. Even if you've built out a nice team around you, it's work. It can be fun. And ultimately, as a creator, you want that independence and you want that freedom, but it takes a lot of work to build a successful independent business.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that too, Dame. Building a team. I want to throw a little curveball to you right now, as someone who has managed a lot of talent. What we have managers that listen to this podcast as well, and I'm sure that they would value the advice that you might have for them. What advice would you give when it comes to managing expectations and egos and trajectory for artists who maybe younger or greener managers, whether they're just coming into the industry, or they're taking on their first client or their second client, or maybe they're coming out of a tumultuous relationship or working through something right now? What might you give from your experience that can kind of help them to navigate that? Because it's tough. I really feel for managers. They have to wear so many different hats these days. They got to know a little bit about marketing, they got to know a little bit about legal, a little bit about this and that and the other thing. It's tough. It's really, really hard.
Yeah, no, the communication piece is super important, right? And you should have a set, at least a weekly call, same day, same time. You're going to speak with your artist much more frequently than that, but that's the day that you really kind of check in and make sure that you're on, right on the right track, and make sure everybody's doing what needs to be done. But the communication is super important for artists that are listening to this, just in case your end goal changes over time, right? Because I think that's something that Hop and I never really got on the same page about, because he wasn't even sure what the end goal was. Like when I jumped in, my thing was, we're trying to make this as big and as successful as possible. where I think he always had doubts of sometimes he wanted to be a big artist, sometimes he didn't want to be a big artist. You got to be on the same page in terms of like what the end goal is, because everything that I'm working on or the people that I'm reaching out to or how I'm positioning the label is like to be the biggest thing possible. If that's not what you're on board for, then we need to figure out, something else, or eventually it's going to feel like you're working against me.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that the communication piece is just, I can't overemphasize that enough.
I think that that's amazing advice because that's the one that people most often want to shy away from. I think artists and their teams is communication and setting a goal and checking in on those goals over time, saying like, hey, are we still on target and are we still on the same page? So I love that piece of advice. It's so simple, but it's so easy to let slip through your fingers.
A lot of this stuff is simple in theory, but once emotion gets involved, once egos get involved, once money gets involved, that's what complicates a lot of these things. Like, in theory, a lot of this stuff is simple. But I think one of the mistakes that I made with the label was not hiring somebody more senior that was kind of like a VP or a number two, so that the guys were hearing a different voice. Even if they were saying the same thing, probably wanted to hear it from a different person, right? That one voice, my voice, might have just gotten annoying over time, not because I was wrong, but because I was the person saying it every time, right? Not to say that I was right about everything, but even if you are right about everything, sometimes people don't want to hear it from the same person. How would I know that unless I had a mentor or unless I had gone through that before? Now if I was to work with artists, I could kind of better sense and understand when another voice needs to deliver the same message.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, I think, as well, for anyone that has a team, whether you're an artist with a team or whether you're a manager working with day-to-days and a bunch of artists, is like get other people in the mix talking about shared goals and shared aspirations and shared ideas and kind of get a consensus and repeat them. I think that that's super important, is like being unafraid to repeat yourself a little bit, or repeat yourself or have other people repeat your ideas.
Yeah, no, and I don't think you don't have to do this as much in other industries, but because of the egos in the music industry and some of the immaturity at times, it's kind of a different thing. I feel like if I was at a Deloitte or a Goldman, like any of my prior employers, and I was a more senior person, I probably wouldn't have to think about some of these things. But because it's the music industry and, artists are a little bit more sensitive, more ego involved. Like you have to learn some of these things in terms of how to deal with artists. And again, that's why I will not manage. That's why I probably won't manage another music artist, because I don't want to tiptoe around things. If I have something to say, I want to be able to say it as candidly as I need. If I feel like I need to say it, I don't want to wait until you smoked your weeds where you're right in the mind space. Do I think that he's ready to hear this yet? No, it's Tuesday morning. He hasn't smoked his weed yet. I gotta wait until, the nighttime or whatever. It's like this ridiculous for me to have to, tiptoe around certain things. And I just refuse to do that. Like I don't have to do that. So, that's more reason why I probably won't manage another music artist.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Oh man, this was a great conversation. Dame, where can people keep up with you? I appreciate you jumping on and chatting with us and sharing your story as always. We'll have to link in the show notes to all of the episodes that Dame has done with us, because every time it's gems and I just have such a blast shooting the shit with you. But where can people keep up with what you're doing with Two Lost, especially on the education side? How can they come into your world?
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Dame_MEC or Instagram at Dame.MEC. And then if you want to learn more about the Two Lost office hours session, I typically post them on my page, but I would just follow Two Lost on Instagram at TOOLOST. And we post the information every week. They're dope sessions from people that are on the ground doing it. And I feel like it's important as my job as kind of in my educator role. And that's why I'm always at least checking in with artists, even though I'm not like working on a rollout. I'm constantly talking to artists and what they're doing. I was going back and forth with an artist that just got a great brand partnership, and I just asking him how he did it, how it happened, how long it took, just so that I know what I'm talking about. I definitely don't want to be an educator that's not in the mix and understand how artists are moving today. So I'm constantly interacting with folks on Twitter and Instagram. So feel free to hit me up.
Great Twitter follow, by the way. Follow him on Twitter.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%. Great. Yeah, great everything follower. Please go engage with Dame Gang. He's amazing to hang out with on the internet and in situations like we're having here today. Super, super fortunate. Thank you so much as always, man. This was a blast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Always, anytime for the Indiepreneur family, man. I appreciate it.
Rock and roll. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Go tap in with Dame. Peace.